My girlfriend took advantage of my kindness for years, then dumped me when she got promoted. Now I'm her boss, and I never respond to her emails. I've always been the kind of guy who believes love means partnership, that you lift each other up, share the load, and celebrate every win together. Maybe that's naive, but it's how I was raised, to believe that effort and loyalty mean something. When I met Sophie, I thought I'd found someone who believed the same. We started at the company around the same time, two underpaid, overworked dreamers trying to prove ourselves. She was magnetic, the kind of woman who made people lean in when she spoke. I was quieter, more behind the scenes. Somehow, we balanced each other out. We'd stay late in the office together, laughing about bad coffee and impossible deadlines. She'd look up from her desk, brush her hair aside, and say, "You always make this chaos feel manageable." The way she said it made me feel like I mattered, not just as a coworker, but as someone in her world. When we started dating, it felt effortless. She'd joke that I was her rock, the one who kept her grounded when things got too intense. I'd help her organize her reports, double-check presentations, even stay up past midnight running numbers for projects she was leading. I told myself it wasn't about credit. It was about love, about teamwork, but slowly I noticed the imbalance. She'd forget to mention my help in meetings. She'd take praise with a smile and say, "Oh, it just came together," while I sat there, exhausted and invisible. I brushed it off. After all, that's what partners do, right? You cover each other's blind spots. Still, there were moments, like when she'd glance at me across the table during a meeting, eyes sharp, calculating, and I'd feel something shift, something that whispered maybe this wasn't partnership anymore. Maybe it was the start of something else, and I didn't know it then, but that something else would destroy me piece by piece. Love, I've learned, doesn't die in one big moment. It fades through 100 small sacrifices no one notices, especially the person you're doing them for. After Sophie's promotion to team lead, everything changed. Suddenly, she had more responsibility, which somehow meant I had more too. I'd take on parts of her workload so she could focus on strategy. I'd stay late polishing her slides while she left early for networking events. I told myself it was temporary. She was under pressure, and I wanted to help. One night I was at my desk alone, the office lights buzzing above me, typing up a quarterly report that had her name on it. My phone buzzed with a picture. Sophie, all dressed up, glass of wine in hand, captioned, "Work drinks, wish you were here." I stared at it for a while, realizing she didn't actually wish that. She just wanted to look thoughtful. When I brought it up later, she smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're such a sweetheart for understanding. I couldn't do this without you." That one line, the same one she'd used so many times before, started to sound less like gratitude and more like a rehearsed script. The promotion that we'd celebrated together started to feel like a wall between us. She'd come home late, her perfume sharp with something expensive and new, talking about the next big opportunity. I'd listen, proud but quietly aching. She never once asked how my projects were going. Then, one Friday evening, our manager mentioned over drinks that Sophie had such strong leadership instincts. He added, "You two must be great collaborators, huh?" I opened my mouth to agree, until he said, "She told us she mentors you." That one line hit harder than any argument ever could, because in that moment I realized she wasn't building us up. She was climbing, and I was just the step she was standing on. It's strange how quickly love can turn into labor. What used to feel like teamwork now felt like management, and I wasn't the one managing. After Sophie's promotion, her tone changed. She started speaking to me like a subordinate, polished, distant, every sentence ending with something that sounded like an order. "Can you just double-check the report before you send it? Make sure the client presentation aligns with my deck." My deck. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her unpaid assistant. At home, she'd toss her bag on the couch, scroll through her phone and say things like, "You need to be more ambitious." Or worse, "You're too comfortable where you are." I'd stare at her, wondering if she remembered all those nights I'd stayed up perfecting her pitch deck so she could impress upper management. But when I tried to remind her, she brushed it off. "Don't make everything about you," she said once, eyes still on her screen. "We're both just doing our part." The part she played involved dinners with department heads and weekends working off-site. Mine involved silence and spreadsheets. One night, I made her favorite pasta, just to bring back some warmth. She barely touched it, saying she'd already eaten with the team. "Don't wait up," she added casually, slipping on heels that didn't look work-appropriate. I told myself not to overthink it. But overthinking was all I could do as the clock ticked past midnight, and her team dinner turned into unread messages. I tried to ignore the growing pit in my stomach, the sense that something sacred between us was quietly eroding. And then, one night, as I passed her office door to grab my laptop, I heard her voice through the crack, soft, flirtatious, saying, "You get me in a way he never will." That was the moment it hit me. Love wasn't dying. It had already been replaced by convenience. The humiliation didn't come all at once. It built slowly, until it finally broke me in front of everyone. We were in a department meeting, the kind where the entire team gathered to discuss quarterly results. Sophie stood at the head of the table, poised and confident, walking everyone through her strategy. I was quietly proud until she pulled up a slide that contained my analysis, my hours, my late nights, my work. But when someone asked who handled the data modeling, she smiled and said, "I did." I froze. I could have corrected her. I should have. But she looked straight at me, just for a split second, with this sharp, warning glance that said, "Don't you dare." Later, after everyone left, I confronted her in the hallway. "You took credit for something I built from scratch," I said, trying to stay calm. She crossed her arms and sighed. "You're overreacting. We're a team, remember? What's mine is ours." Her words twisted in my chest like a knife. I wanted to yell, to demand respect, but instead I swallowed it. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. That night she came home acting like nothing had happened, ordering takeout, laughing at something on her phone. When I didn't join in, she rolled her eyes. "Don't make me feel guilty for working harder than you," she snapped. "You should be proud I'm moving up." But all I could think about was that meeting. The looks from coworkers who knew the truth but said nothing. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her backup plan, her safety net, the one she could lean on when things got hard and step over when they didn't. And deep down, I knew if she ever had to choose between protecting me or protecting her position, she'd let me fall without hesitation. I just didn't realize how soon that choice would come. I used to think breakups happened with tears and shouting, that they were messy, emotional, human. But Sophie ended things like she was closing a deal. It started with small detachment, missed dinners, short replies, less eye contact. Then one night, while I was setting the table, she said my name the way someone might say, "We need to talk," in a movie. Calm, cold, prepared. "I think we should take a step back," she said, not even sitting down. "From what?" I asked, though I already knew. "From this," she gestured vaguely between us. "From us. I just need space to focus on myself right now." I laughed at first, thinking it was stress talking. "Sophie, you are focusing on yourself. That's all you've done for months." Her expression didn't change. "You don't get it. I can't keep holding myself back for someone who's stuck." "Stuck?" I repeated. My voice cracked and I hated how weak it sounded. She looked away. "You're comfortable and that's fine for you. But I want more. I need someone who challenges me." It wasn't a breakup. It was a layoff, delivered in corporate language, void of empathy. She packed her things that night, taking half of what we'd built together. Our furniture, the TV, even the coffee machine I'd saved months for. Before she left, she dropped an email draft on my desk, something she'd written for work. At the bottom, she'd accidentally left a note. "He'll be fine. He's used to cleaning up my mess." When the door closed behind her, the silence felt endless. I sat there surrounded by the ghost of her perfume, staring at the space she'd left behind. I wanted to hate her, but all I could feel was emptiness, because she hadn't broken my heart. She'd just Moved on like I was never part of the equation, and then, a week later, I found out who she'd moved on with. The week after Sophie left felt like crawling through mud. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and every email notification made my stomach twist, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd changed her mind. But she never did. Instead, I saw a company photo pop up on LinkedIn. Sophie standing next to her new department head, the same man she'd been taking work calls with at midnight. Her caption read, "New chapter, new opportunities." It felt like someone had pressed a bruise that never healed. But I didn't block her. I wanted to remember. Pain, at least, was proof that I had once cared. A month later, I got a call from an old mentor, Michael, a senior manager I used to assist back when I was still invisible in Sophie's shadow. He'd moved to a new company, a fast-rising tech startup that was growing faster than it could hire. "I've seen your work," he said. "You were the brains behind half of those campaigns, weren't you?" I hesitated, then admitted, "Yeah, I was." "Good," he said, "because I need someone like you on my team. Come in tomorrow." The next few weeks felt like waking up from a long coma. I poured everything I had into that new role: ideas, late nights, clarity. For the first time in years, people saw me. They noticed my input. They respected it. I stopped checking Sophie's social media. I stopped replaying the breakup in my head. Slowly, the air around me started to feel lighter. Then, one morning, Michael called me into his office. "We're expanding," he said, sliding a folder toward me. "Big merger coming up. You'll be managing some of the incoming teams." I opened the file and froze. The company we were merging with? Sophie's firm. Michael smiled, oblivious. "Looks like you'll be overseeing a few familiar faces." I stared at the logo on the page and felt something sharp and satisfying ignite deep inside me. For the first time since she left, I actually smiled. The merger day felt surreal. Months of transition meetings, new workflows, and onboarding chaos, all leading to one massive conference room filled with unfamiliar faces and stiff smiles. I was sitting near the front reviewing notes when I heard a familiar voice at the door. Her voice. I didn't even have to look up to know it was Sophie. That same confident tone, that same practiced laugh. When I finally glanced over, there she was, walking in like she owned the place, clipboard in hand, her smile faltering the second her eyes met mine. She froze, just for a heartbeat. Then the professional mask slipped back on. "Wow," she said softly, approaching me after the meeting. "Didn't expect to see you here." I kept my tone neutral. "Guess the corporate world's smaller than we thought." Her eyes darted to the nameplate on my desk. Project Director, Operations. I watched the realization sink in. I wasn't her equal anymore. I was her superior. For the rest of the day, she acted composed, but I caught the small signs. Her forced laugh in meetings, the way she glanced at me when she thought I wasn't looking. At one point, she sent me an email. "Hey, we should catch up sometime soon," just to clear the air. I read it twice and closed it without replying. Later that afternoon, we crossed paths in the hallway. She smiled too brightly and said, "We should really talk soon." I nodded once. "We'll see." Her confidence wavered. For the first time, I saw something flicker behind her eyes, something that looked like discomfort, maybe even regret. It wasn't revenge yet, but watching her realize the tables had turned. That was the first time I felt the weight of what she'd done start to lift off my chest. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. It didn't take long for Sophie to find her opening. 3 days after the merger became official, she appeared at my office door holding 2 coffees. Mine, just how I used to drink it. "Truce?" she asked with that same practiced smile. I stared at her for a moment before gesturing for her to sit. She started talking fast, the way people do when they're nervous but pretending not to be. "Listen, I know things ended badly between us," she said, "but I've grown a lot since then. I was young, selfish, and scared." I didn't say a word. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You were always the one who saw potential in me. I miss that." It was almost impressive, how she mixed apology with flattery, guilt with manipulation. I recognized the pattern now. Every word had a purpose. She wasn't here to make peace. She was here to test the waters. When she noticed I wasn't responding, she switched tactics. "We could make a great team again," she said softly. "We always did. Remember how unstoppable we were?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah," I said. "I remember who did the work." Her face tightened, but she recovered quickly, laughing like I'd made a harmless joke. "You haven't changed," she said, eyes flicking to the clock. Still sharp. As she left, she set the untouched second coffee on my desk. "You'll think about it," she said confidently. I did think about it. How she once used those same words to convince me to give up opportunities for her. That evening, she sent an email. "Had a great chat today. Would love your feedback on my new proposal." I read it, then marked it as read, and never replied. Because silence, I was learning, could speak louder than any revenge. Silence became my armor, and the more I used it, the more power I realized it held. At first, Sophie mistook it for hesitation. She'd send polite follow-up emails. "Hey, just checking in." Then slightly firmer ones. "Need your input, ASAP." By the second week, the tone shifted entirely. "I've been trying to reach you. This is starting to affect my project timelines." I'd read each one slowly, deliberately, before closing them without a word. I wasn't ignoring her out of spite anymore. I just didn't owe her my energy. In meetings, she'd glance my way for approval, waiting for the nod she used to earn so easily. But I'd keep my expression neutral, my attention fixed on others. I didn't need to embarrass her. My indifference did the work for me. The shift rippled through the office. People who once hovered around Sophie now looked to me for direction. Her voice, once dominant, started to blend into background noise. And, for the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling like someone else was taking credit for my oxygen. Late one evening, she stopped by my office again, her confidence noticeably cracked. "You're still mad at me, aren't you?" she said quietly. I looked up from my laptop. "I'm not mad, Sophie. I just moved on." She blinked, unsure how to respond. "So, what? This is your payback? Making me feel invisible?" I smiled faintly. "No, I'm just giving you what you gave me." Her eyes softened for a moment, like she almost understood. Then she whispered, "You're not who I remember." I closed my laptop, stood, and said, "That's the point." When she walked out, I realized something. Revenge didn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it just meant no longer caring if they saw you shine. But the universe wasn't done yet, because the next email she sent would change everything. It happened on a Thursday morning. Quiet, ordinary, and utterly perfect for disaster. Sophie's team had been managing a major client project, one she'd pitched aggressively to prove her worth after the merger. She'd sent dozens of emails asking for my input, but I'd stayed hands-off. Her project, her responsibility. That morning, the client requested an urgent call. Something about budget discrepancies. I joined midway just in time to hear the client's voice tremble with frustration. "These numbers don't match what we agreed on," the client said. "We're pulling funding if this isn't fixed immediately." Sophie's face turned pale on screen. I'll handle it personally," she stammered. "My team—" The client cut her off. "Your team didn't send the files." "You did. After the call, upper management called an emergency review. I didn't speak, just observed as Sophie tried to shift blame. There was confusion between departments," she said, voice shaky. "I was waiting for confirmation. Someone turned to me. Were you aware of this delay?" I looked straight at her, then answered truthfully. She never followed up with me directly. That was all it took. The room fell silent. She realized I wasn't covering for her anymore. Later, she cornered me outside the conference room, eyes glassy, voice trembling. "Please," she whispered. "You know I didn't mean for this to happen. If you speak up for me, I can fix it." I met her gaze calmly. "You taught me that everyone has to take responsibility for their own mistakes, remember?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. She just stood there, the same way I had months ago. Small, powerless, exposed. By the end of the week, she was quietly removed from the project. Rumors spread fast. Some said she might be transferred. Others whispered she'd resign. But I didn't celebrate. Watching her unravel wasn't sweet. It was sobering. Because for the first time, I saw the version of myself I used to be, loyal, naive, and blind, staring back at me through her. And that's when I realized revenge wasn't the ending I wanted after all. Sophie resigned 2 weeks later. No big announcement, no farewell email, just silence. One morning, her desk was cleared out and all that remained was a faint trace of her perfume and a coffee mug that said, "Boss babe." It was almost poetic. That afternoon, as I sorted through emails, one popped up from her personal account. The subject line read, "For what it's worth." I hovered over it for a long moment before opening it. Inside, she'd written, "I know I messed up. I was insecure, and I took advantage of someone who only ever tried to help me. I didn't see your worth back then, and I regret that every day. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." For a second, I almost felt that old pull, the urge to respond, to comfort, to fix things that weren't mine to fix. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. I closed the email, deleted it, and sat there staring at the empty inbox. Outside, the sun was setting against the office windows, painting the walls gold. The hum of keyboards and muted voices around me felt strangely peaceful. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. The silence that used to ache now felt like freedom. A few weeks later, my boss called me in. "You've been doing exceptional work," he said. "We're expanding another division, and I want you to lead it." I nodded, trying to stay composed, but inside, something finally clicked into place. I walked out of his office, past Sophie's old desk, and for the first time, I didn't feel bitterness or pride, just clarity. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need revenge. I already had the closure I'd been chasing. It came quietly, without confrontation, just a simple truth. I'd outgrown the person who once made me feel small. Months passed, and life settled into something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the loud kind that comes with celebrations or milestones, but the quiet kind that sits with you in the mornings while you drink coffee and realize no one's draining your energy anymore. I'd grown into my new role, surrounded by people who respected what I brought to the table. My ideas were heard, my name carried weight, and for the first time in my career, I didn't have to fight to be seen. But more importantly, I didn't need to be seen by her. Every now and then, Sophie's name would surface in conversation, someone mentioning she was freelancing, trying to rebuild her reputation. The old me might have felt pity. Now, I just felt distance. We were two different people orbiting entirely separate worlds. One evening, as I locked up the office, I paused by the window overlooking the city. The same skyline we used to talk about conquering together. I realized I had conquered it in my own quiet way. Not through vengeance or power plays, but through growth. I used to think closure came from hearing, "I'm sorry," but real closure came from no longer needing those words at all. When I got home that night, I opened my old folder of saved projects, some with her name still attached, and deleted them all. Every file, every email, every trace. It didn't hurt. It felt like finally setting down a weight I'd carried for too long. As the last file disappeared, I whispered to myself, "You did it." Not the kind of "you did it" people shout in movies, but a quiet acknowledgement that I'd survived someone who once made me question my worth. Sophie taught me the cost of kindness, but she also taught me the value of boundaries. And in the end, that was the promotion I didn't know I needed. Freedom.